The opinions, viewpoints, and beliefs presented on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the management, the affiliates and broadcast partners, or the sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. Between science and ignorance, there is filler.
Hello everyone and good evening and welcome. You're listening to Paranormal Filler. I am of course your host Wes Forsyth, and the original broadcast date is October 9th, 2016. I'm hoping all the audio levels are good. I was telling, because I did the Friday night show for Scarefest, and they were kind of hinky, really. That stuff was cutting out. Basically, I actually cleaned my office a little bit and dusted, like, the mixing board, and so I had all the knobs screwed up. So I'm hoping I got everything back into kilter now, as one might say. Quick reminder, Paranormal Filler is sponsored by Ken Boggles House of Cards, Tarot by Ken.com. My guests tonight are Deb and Nick Lantz. I've actually been to a convention or two with them, but I've never really met them until this past Scarefest. I took some time. Deb was parked next to some other people that I know, so I took the time to introduce myself to her. I would have spent more time talking to Nick, but I did. He's a young buck and all that, and he was out scamming on the ladies, as we say. But Deb, of course, is a psychic medium. Nick is a researcher and author, and they are both, I noticed in their bios, former podcast hosts. Everybody I know at one time or another has had a podcast. For my listeners that follow me on Twitter, you might first of all, you might have noticed that my neighbor tried to burn down the county of Harrison County, Kentucky. Basically, he set a cornfield, about a 40, it's I don't even know, it's 60, 80, 90 acres. Tried to burn, and it set it on fire. So it was quite the show. You've also might have noticed I'm going to be working on a new project called Gone Off Topic. It's a little more or less limiting than Paranormal Filler. I'm going to try to cover some other topic, whatever I feel like talking about. For example, this is the type of thing you'll hear on Gone Off Topic. I've decided to make my real life reflect what I see on Facebook, so that basically anybody that does not agree with me in every way is I'm just doing away with them. That's, I'm just going to delete them from my life, as they say.
I unfriend you.
So that's a little bit of about what's going on. One last thing I want to bring up, of course, tonight, we are up against the second presidential debate. So I'm sure a lot of my listeners are really worried about what they're missing. So I'm gonna fill you in real quick. Here's what you are missing right now. You're a liar. You're a pig. You're a liar. You're a pig. You're a liar.
Let's call the whole thing off.
So that is okay. I've got the frivolity out of the way. Deb and Nick, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Really excited to be talking to you, everybody. And Nick, I saw you talking to the hot blonde on Sunday. Now, I just want to let you know, if I was 30 years younger and not married and a little better looking, I'd give you a run for your money on that one, son.
I believe you.
She's a really sweet girl. I know who you're talking about, Wes. She's a really sweet girl.
I guess
and her family.
That's Maria's
really
daughter.
Nice too.
It's Maria's daughter, isn't it? Schmidt?
Yes, her name.
Yes.
The blonde's name's Maddie.
Well, there's no. I guarantee you, there's no real point in me remembering her name at this stage in my life. So, everyone, Deb and I had a hell of a conversation Sunday. We kind of farted around all weekend, you might say, and had not really talked. And we had some mutual friends who said, you two need to get together. So we're not going to get into the great amount of discussion that we had, but I do want to introduce you to the listeners. You are, from everything I read in your bio and everything I've heard about you, Deb, you're, I guess, what I would call a full-service medium. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, that's very accurate. I can do it all. I'm clairaudient, clairsentient, clairvoyant. I have all the abilities, but I think where I excel most is in my mediumship.
In other words, as a go-between between the dead, even if they, I read that cute little thing. Oh, we don't really die. Yeah, we do. It's just your definition of death. We have to.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
I tell people, it's like changing coats. When one coat gets wore out, you can't use it anymore. It doesn't serve any purpose for you. You shed it. You take it off. You throw it away. You change it to a new coat. That's a good analogy for.
There you go.
For death.
And of course, in my viewpoint of the afterlife, you get to walk around in your underwear for a while before you put your new coat on.
Whatever rocks your boat, Wes. If that's what you want to envision, that I won't argue with you.
Well, I'm just saying. Okay, the coat being the metaphor for life, for an earthly life. Then I think we get to mess around on the other side for a while if we feel like it.
If walking around in your underwear is what being dead's like, I don't think it's going to be a whole lot different for me.
It's a metaphor.
I don't think it's going to be a very rough transitional period.
Well,
No.
Well, some of us adjust to that better than others. Anyway, that aside. Okay, Deb, now I understand that now you received or started recognizing your gifts early in your life.
Oh, yes. Yep. I always knew it was different. But, you don't have anything else, another life to compare it to. All you have is the life you're living right now. So I didn't realize that other kids weren't experiencing the same things that I was experiencing. But as a child, you get told it's just your imagination, or quit making up stories, or, you're just doing this to take all the limelight. So you tend to keep it quieter as you mature, because you feel like maybe I shouldn't be sharing as much as I do with people. But honestly, Wes, I never even called myself a psychic or medium or sensitive or any of those other terms, because I just never identified with it. I really didn't. I just thought that everyone could see, like, oh, there's another energy in here. It's not a physical form. Of course everyone can see it. I can see it. Why can't everyone else see it? So I never really called myself a psychic or anything like that, honest to God, until my early 40s. When
now wait a minute. Now I'm with you on when you're a child, and everybody else tells you your imaginary friends aren't there. I understand that.
Right.
But But if you were experiencing these things, I would think in adulthood. I would think that if it's just a matter of the hair standing up on the back of your neck, or funny thoughts running through your head, but to have full blown clairvoyance to see so and so's dead relative, standing by the casket, that seems to me something that would have triggered a little more curiosity before the age of 40.
Well, I knew I could see it. I knew I was different, but I just kept it very hidden because I did not want that attention for this gift. I did not want people asking me questions. I didn't want people asking me, can you contact so-and-so? I really did not appreciate my gifts.
I got you. You did not embrace your gifts at that.
No,
okay.
No, gosh, no, not at all. In fact, I really had hoped they would go away. And like in college, you have social scenes that allow you to distract yourself, so to speak, from what's going on. Then you get married, then you're preoccupied with raising your family. There's other things that can occupy that time and your change of focus, but it's always been there. It's just I never really acknowledged it until my early 40s, and then once I did, my abilities just increased tenfold because I had acknowledged it. But it's always been there. I just never wanted this gift. Never wanted this gift.
I'm with you now. With what made that? What was the impetus for that change in your mindset? What brought about? What made you decide? Hey, wait! I see dead people, and I'm going to shout it to the heavens.
Well, honestly, Wes, I've always been fascinated by psychics, and I always sought out counsel from psychics because I knew that they knew what they were talking about. I mean, I knew from my own experience that if I can see dead people and this person's calling himself a psychic, why can't they? And one thing that most people don't understand is when you're a gifted person, you don't always get insight into your own life, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't always have direct communication with the divine source over what's upcoming in my life or what I should be doing because I feel I also have to learn my life lessons just like everyone else. So I would seek counsel from other psychics, and every time they'd say, well, you're gifted too, and I would laugh and say, oh, no, I'm not gifted. And then I took my dear friend out to lunch one day because her mother was very, very sick with lung cancer. And we knew she was not going to make it. It was a very dark time for my friend. So we're out to lunch, and we're at BW3's of all places, okay? So picture this. I'm sitting at a table with my friend, and she's talking away about something or other, and all of a sudden, a male spirit jumps up on our table, okay, an older gentleman, carrying with him a small puppy. It looked like a puppy, but it actually was a full-grown dog. He's waving his hands frantically in my face. Now, this person jumped up our table is not in his physical form. And I was trying very, very hard to ignore this man. And finally, I just took a leap of faith, and I said, Becky, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. And I said, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but just hear me out. And this gentleman was telling me some things about my friend that were personal. I'm not going to talk about on air. And she validated what I was sharing with her, and she said, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I described this dog that they was carrying. She knew exactly the dog. And once she had validated what I was saying, more spirits came through. And so from that point on, she's like, Deb, I never knew this about you. I said, well, I just try to ignore it or I don't share it with people. But this man was very insistent. And so she told some friends, and there used to be a beautiful metaphysical store in our town. And she found out about me and asked me if I would start doing readings there. And I was very uncomfortable with that. So I said, tell you what, I'll do readings one day and one day only. And everything I earn, 100% of it, I will donate to breast cancer or lung cancer fund that was set for my friend's mother. And so I did it one day and one day only. I thought, this is a one-time deal. I'm never going to do it again because I was a nervous wreck. But apparently after that day of doing readings in that store, the store owner called me the following Monday. She said, my phone's ringing off the hook, but we want you back. And I said, oh, no, I don't do readings. She said, Deb, everyone you read for wants you back. So just started doing readings in their store, like on the weekends and here and there, and word spread. And I thought, you know what? I have this gift. God gave me this gift for a reason. And it's obviously helping other people. It brings peace to them. So maybe I should consider doing this for a career. And from that point on, that's what I've done.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. But before we do, I want to ask you, you're 40-ish here. Now, how old was Nick at the point you embraced your own gifts? People don't do the math.
No, I don't care how. I'm 51. I'll say it. I own it, and I'm proud of it.
40 years.
I'm not
Well, then that puts him. Okay.
Well, Nick's 23. Nick's 23 now. So I'm not good with math. But Nick was. You were in middle school, Nick, or?
I would say I was probably
remember?
around age. I would say, based on my memory, probably 13, 14.
Middle school. Yeah. And then I started taking Nick with me to conventions because both of my children have inherited at least some parts of my gifts. And when I first started doing readings at conventions, I would have Nick sit with me. I'd ask for permission from the client and have Nick sit with me, and Nick would just write things down that he was picking up and just contribute to my readings. But doing readings is not Nick's thing. He doesn't feel comfortable doing that. He prefers to take a more scientific approach, and so that's how we work very well together.
Okay, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Everybody, you're listening to Paranormal Filler. My guests tonight are Deb Lantz and Nick Lantz. Hello, friends. Are you exhausted with life? Resent your children? Maybe your husband is cheating on you. Get yourself a tarot reading with Ken Boggle. He can provide you with the clarity, guidance, and answers you need. That's tarotbyken.com. He makes things seem less shitty. And welcome back to Paranormal Filler. Okay, so Nick, you're picking up where we left off. You're roughly 13 years old. You're at the age of embarrassment, I would call it.
Mm-hmm.
What had these thoughts ran through your mind that you remember at this time, or was this like your mom came home one day and said, "I'm a psychic medium"?
Well, the earliest kind of instance of anything like that I can remember is just in our when I was actually probably a bit younger. This is probably elementary school age, and we lived in a different house at the time, and I knew my mom did stuff with ghost hunting groups. I know there was a psychic friend of hers that she had worked for, and she did some paranormal stuff. So I knew that was a part of her life. And then the house itself was haunted as well. So I had my own experiences in the house, and we do trips. We'd go to Pennsylvania, go to Gettysburg, and we'd get out of the car and take photos and stuff. So the earliest that I can remember of my paranormal experience was kind of related to things like that. And then as I got older, I remember when this incident occurred when my mom came out with her abilities, and I kind of just already knew about it, but I guess for her it was more of admitting to herself what she could do, and then just saying, "Oh yeah, I actually can do this." So I remember when that happened, and we had, like she said before the break, there was a metaphysical store not too far away. She was talking to the owner one day, and the owner said, "Hey, why don't you start doing readings here?" And so she did, and that's kind of where things just sort of took off.
Now, not knowing what part of Ohio that you're actually from, did you quickly gain the reputation as the weirdo's son? Or, I mean, I don't know how well this is still, I mean, we're talking, I mean, I guess, ghost hunting, 13 years ago was picking up. But it's not to the acceptance level it is now. Right.
Well, when we started, I'm sorry, Nick, to interrupt you, but when we started, that's when the show Ghost Hunters was just getting started. So it was kind of a new thing at that time.
Yeah, like you said, this now versus then are very different times. But we had lived in like a small farm town, and it was one of those things where we didn't really want to make it public knowledge, just because it was that small, small town gossip type thing. And I moved to that school when I was at the age of 12, so I always kind of had the the feeling of being an outsider in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed as I got older, of course, and I got more involved in school and whatever. But that mentality of just trying to keep things on the down low, just for the sake of avoiding that discussion with people, that was kind of just our mental process. And I remember when I was in high school, I started to not care quite as much. I told, like, my closest friends knew. There was one or two teachers of mine that knew, but for the most part, it wasn't public knowledge. It was just, a handful of people that knew about it, which was kind of silly because all you had to do was Google her name, or I actually started giving lectures at age 17. That was when I gave my very first lecture. So after a while, it didn't take long for people just to Google my name, and you'd see all this information about me. So it was kind of silly after a while to be hiding it, but that was our mentality through high school. And then when I finally went to college, I realized, I'm not in a small farm town anymore. I'm at a major university. If people have a problem with this aspect of my life, which I think is really fascinating and cool, then I don't have to hang out with these people. There's 20,000 other potential friends I could have. So I had zero secrecy when I got to college. I just stopped caring, and I just was completely open, and I am who I am. This is me. If you don't like it, too bad. And I realized that most people actually think it's really, really fascinating and want to talk about it. And whether or not they believe in it or not, that doesn't really matter. They still think it's actually really interesting. So it's actually made, opened up a lot of new friendships for me, just by being completely honest with, who I am.
That is, you have touched on one of my keen observations. Statistically, I think like almost 50% of people will admit they believe in ghosts. But you know what? 3/4 of the other 50% have a damn ghost story when they walk up to you. That little, I don't believe in ghosts, but we saw my grandmother baking cookies and she's been dead 10 years. So I do love that mentality. Now, as far as Deb said, do you not concentrate on the gifts you've inherited and prefer to go on, or do you just feel that they're not as strongly leveraged? Believe me, I appreciate embracing the technological side, and that's where I'm going next. But I was curious about that aspect of it.
Well, especially early on, I had my own experience as a child, and I knew I could see things and experience things too. Not to the extent that I think my mom did. But, if it's one of those things where if I had continued to pursue it, I could have followed a very similar path that my mom is on. But as I got older, not necessarily as I got older, but as I got more kind of self-assured and comfortable, figuring out who I am, the awkward years of high school and then transitioning to as you get older through college and stuff, I kind of realized, if I wanted to, I could go down that path. But I started to realize that it wasn't the path that I wanted. It was one of those things where, oh, you're Deb's son, so you're psychic too. And there was a certain level of expectation associated with that. I was going, oh, you can give readings too. You're a psychic medium, which I could. I actually had given readings at one point, and some of which I remember one that blew my mind because I did so well, which actually really freaked me out. But it just, again, it was one of those things where it was more of an expectation of people. You're Deb's son, so you should do this. And I got to the point where I said, no, I know I can do this, but I don't want to do this. I've always been a very logical and analytical person, and I've always been naturally drawn towards more of the research, more of the scientific side of things, and it's just always fascinated me. And when my mom and I work together, sometimes it'd just be me and her, and we'd be a great team. And the reason for that is because she would handle the psychic element of it. But you can't have a psychic and then another psychic going back and forth, and call that paranormal investigation.
No, I agree with that.
You need that balance. So that's why I would come in. And I think that did give me a certain advantage, having that background of being raised by a psychic, because I understood when she was talking about things, I understood what she was talking about, I understood where she was coming from, or how she was trying to explain something, and in a way that maybe someone who is solely from that scientific background wouldn't necessarily be able to completely grasp what she's trying to explain. So I think that definitely gave me a certain advantage. And especially as I got older and older, I really sort of found my own path and pursued it versus just following someone else's out of expectation. And I think that's something that it just comes with, growing up too, and kind of figuring out who you are and what it is that you want to do.
Now, is it something when you investigate? Is it something that you mentally block out so that you can not feel tainted, I guess would be the way to put it? In other words, I personally would think it would be really annoying to myself if I send somebody in the corner and then start digging for equipment because I'm just sure that's going to get it. I prefer to do it the other way.
Right. Well, for me, it all depends on the expectation, or the I guess my intention with the investigation. And I do not have the same abilities that my mom has. There's all sorts of different types of gifts. For me, it was always, there was a point earlier on as a child that I would see things very, very clearly. Nowadays, not so much. It's usually pretty rare when I physically see things. For me, it's more audible. I usually hear things or just pick up information, get impressions. But when I'm going to an investigation, that's not my natural setting. At one point, that may have been it, but I sort of kind of developed, you could say, a switch. And that switch is usually on, straightforward thinking scientific mode. But there's been times where I go out with, a group of people, and my intention was I'm not going to be, handling all this equipment. I'm just going to be going there to experience what's going on. I go out with my friends back in high school. We check out old abandoned buildings and all these haunted locations. But we didn't have these fancy equipment. We were just exploring. And when we do that, I was always naturally much more open to picking things up because, I wasn't handling all this equipment. I didn't have an agenda of going in and trying to gather information. So for me, that's when I was able to just open up and pick up information. But that's, especially, I think one thing I noticed whenever I opened up, I didn't like the feeling of, I just didn't like the feeling I would get from opening up. I was always that person that when things went south, people would come to feel safe, to, feel grounded. And whenever I opened myself up to that level, I kind of lost that sense of stability and feeling grounded. And that's a really uncomfortable feeling for me because I am that guy that people come to. So when I started to open myself up and not really get that feeling anymore, it was very uncomfortable. So I think I definitely probably built up some sort of mental shield or on-off switch or whatever you want to call it. Definitely more so than my mom has. I know my mom, she has zero switch. If something's coming in, she can't filter it. It's got to come out. It's really, really hard for her to block it out. Versus me, I'm much more. I have a much better gift at blocking things out than she does. Definitely.
I think also what Nick's trying to say, once you open yourself up, you're vulnerable. It's a matter of vulnerability. And when Nick and I investigate together, I rely on him for protection. And he has protected me on many investigations. His energy, he just exudes a very confident, self-assured persona that just keeps negativity away. If I've investigated myself without Nick, and it does not end well for me, I always have to have someone there who's a grounding source. Because when I tune in, I give it everything, and it makes me extraordinarily vulnerable when I do that.
See, now, now going inside baseball, of course, most of my listeners have heard me talk about it. That might be my personal weakness in the psychic field, is because no matter how badly I want to open up and how hard I try to open up, and sometimes I'm really successful at it, the thought of being vulnerable just doesn't, it's not in my vocabulary. In other words, when I open up, when I tune in, I've still got that cloak, that steel trap, whatever you want to call it, that shield, the sword, however you want to picture it, is there. In other words, nothing's coming at me, but I'd like to take a good look at you is the way I look at it. Now,
that's wonderful.
Now, Nick, when you're in the field, what is your what research? That's a bad way to put it. What tools do you most rely on?
Well, first and foremost, I always have a video camera on me. That's my go-to. Usually, it's kind of unusual to see me at investigation without a camera in my hand or without a camera pointing on me. I'm a journalism media guy in school. I'm a researcher. I'm a storyteller. So for me, my mentality is, well, if you have all this equipment with you, and you get great results and a lot of cool things happen, it's kind of pointless unless you have a way of documenting that. So I always have a camera, because unless you document it, there's no point. There's no way to show what happened. So for me, I always have a night vision camera, and then after that, I like to use a wide array of gadgets. I'm very skeptical of everything, so I don't put 100% faith in every piece of equipment I use, but a nice go-to just to be able to measure in the environment is an EMF meter. It's nice to be able to see any fluctuations that do occur, and if they do occur, then you might be able to set up a little experiment in that location or start trying to communicate. So usually camera, EMF, and a digital recorder is usually what I have on me, and then everything else is just for the sake of experimenting and saying, oh, let's see if we use this, what might happen, or let's give this a try. So everything after that is just extra, really.
See, now you're young and in college, so you're smarter than I am. I do a lot. I used to investigate much the same way. And one thing I never did, I very rarely would go back through my video evidence looking for EVPs. I had my digital recorder, and to me, that's what that tool was for. And I don't know that my camera had was technically a different type of microphone. So I had better luck using a digital recorder on getting what I would call EVPs. Now, occasionally the camera would pick up a disembodied voice, and very very rarely but because that's one of those really great things that you get. But do you have any knowledge of why do you feel the need for both devices?
Well, for me, it's a visual thing. It's all about, actually being able to, because, you can, if you just have a great recording, there's always that one person who says, well, were you moving around when that happened, or what were you doing physically when you had that recording?
Right.
So I always like to have that visual element just there to say, okay, no one was moving, or oh, I was walking through, over gravel or something, and, that's what that sound was, whatever. So for me, it's all about the visual element. With that being said, I always also use that digital recorder, but oddly enough, one of the best pieces of evidence I've ever captured. And this is saying something, because I really have only released very few pieces, because I am so highly critical of every piece of evidence or potential evidence. So I have one piece of evidence that I released a few years ago, and it was actually a bit of audio that I had no recorder. It was just me walking down a hallway with a camcorder, and I hear to my left a whisper from a room, and as I turn around to see what that is, the door slammed shut. And I actually got the audio of the whisper on my camcorder. So that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can get audio on there too, but usually I when I'm doing that, my intention is, I have this audio device in my hand. I'm going to try to get an EVP on this. It's very rarely where I'm thinking, maybe I can capture the audio on my camcorder and use that. That's not how my brain normally works.
Well,
it's always cool when that happens.
So in other words, you don't know any more about it than I do, psychologically.
No.
Because I'm with you. My one of my gold standard pieces of evidence was caught on a camera. Now, it just so happened to be caught on a digital recorder also, but that was really, once again, I think it was a disembodied voice, because it had to do with where the stuff was set up and everything, so that, in other words, we could document why it was louder on one device, etc. But now, one thing we did right before I got out of active field work was we actually, our team had a cameraman, and that person's job was not to get evidence at all. It was to keep the camera on us, just like you said, to keep us honest in everything else. Well, no matter what we were using, that person's job was to document where we were. So,
right.
Okay, we're going to take, I wouldn't even call this a commercial break, but I do need to put a plug in here. Sunday, October 15th. The Lost History Museum investigation in Valley Mines, Missouri. We're investigating the Lost History Museum. It's the 1749 settlement house of Francois Valley. Tickets are only $30. Still plenty of spots left. It doesn't look like it's going to be a big crowded investigation. You'll have some quality time with the stars that show up. Go to paranormalfiller.com. Click the Paranormal Valley Mines link, and you can investigate with Chris Sutton and 3 Girls in the Dark Paranormal team. So check that out. Okay, everybody, Paranormal Filler, my guests are Deb Lantz and Nick Lantz. Now, Deb, okay, we've kind of covered that you apparently didn't embarrass Nick too badly when you came out of the metaphysical closet. When did you start? I hate to say including him, but I guess that's a good way to put it. What after you embraced your gifts, how did you? I guess you'd say work Nick into the act.
Well, I've always been a stay-at-home mom, so I've always been very close with my kids. First of all, my kids are always my priority. And I don't like leaving them on weekends and whatnot to go to conventions or ghost hunts. But, Nick just started coming along because of his own journey of discovering his self-discovery of a past life, or if that's what you want to call it. When he was 13, he had a dream, and this dream and just kind of unfolded to more and more information coming out. And that's a whole separate story for a whole nother night, because we go on that. But once Nick started uncovering this life as a soldier, we started talking about that at conventions, and that was our most popular lecture. So I started taking Nick with me at conventions, and Nick's a very personable, friendly man, so he brought lots of to my table. It's like, yeah, buddy, you go with me to all the conventions. So we just started doing that early on in Nick's life.
Now, I found it interesting before when you talked about his energy being different, as he described himself. I like the dynamic that you've described, because now something Nick mentioned about two psychics, calling it a paranormal investigation. A lot of them do it, but beyond that, I've witnessed a lot of times if you have 2 people trying to go into full-blown medium mode during a investigation, that if anything, their energies scramble each other. Of course, I've never worked with a mother-son team to view the dynamic. When he's with you in that aspect, do you think it's that because you feel protected, you're even more open, or does he act like a psychic battery? How describe the difference when he's around versus when he's not?
Well, when he's around, I know I'm safe, so I can go into my full-blown, tuning in routine. If I'm with people I'm not comfortable with or I've never worked with before, I don't try to tune in as much because I don't know what might attach itself to me or try to influence my behavior. So when I'm with Nick, I go full bore, 110%. So I guess it is the best way to describe it. But I do have to disagree with you a little bit on working with two psychics. I will agree with you if you work with two psychics the energies don't match, that would scramble. That does scramble your brain. Because I have worked with psychics who our energies don't match. He might be coming from a different perspective on things, might have a different agenda than I do. But at the same time, I work with truly gifted psychics who are amazing. And for me, personally, when I do that, our energies just amp up the atmosphere that much more. And actually, when I work with psychics, our energies are more in line and are more matching. My abilities increase threefold, as well as the other psychic. So I think it has to do with more, matching energies than two psychics working together.
I've actually been told that numerous times. I've just not had the great honor of witnessing it, except in cases where it's like two people that have worked together, over amount of time, where they've learned to feed off of each other's energies, even if they're fairly quiet, and don't oh, do you see the lady in the corner? Oh yeah, she's got a dress on, that type of thing. I'm talking about even when they do it what I would call a serious investigation style, where they just write their stuff down and keep most of it to themselves. I have seen people that have been together for years do it well, but I've also seen I know my listeners are tired of listening to the story. A really gifted psychic that I used to work with a lot. She had a friend who was a psychic, but if you put the two of them in a building together, the less gifted of the two, the friend, something about her energy just totally scrambled, and and it was something that they did not even recognize themselves. But as a passive bystander who had seen her work in other environments, I could recognize it, and I could and I could really see the difference. So that's the only reason I bring it up.
Right.
Now that's in an investigation standpoint. Tell me more about, you said for a while he would sit and do readings with you, even though he wasn't actively. Do the readings feel different to you when he's around too, or is that just something completely different?
Honestly, no, because when I'm doing a reading, I'm so focused on the client and their energy that, elephants could walk behind me, I wouldn't know. But what Nick would do is he would not speak up during my reading. He would just jot things down that he was picking up. And it was kind of funny because as he was writing things down, what he was writing down would start coming out of my mouth. And I would show the client at the end of the reading, like, this is what Nick picked up too, just to re-edit, to remind you that what I'm saying has valid points. Don't discount it. And Nick might chime in at the end of my reading and say, like, yes, I felt like your son took his own life because of a drug issue or whatever. So that's how it worked for me and Nick. I mean, I always appreciate him being there, but whether he's there or not did not affect my reading at all, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, yeah, that's a pretty good explanation. Okay, now, Nick, beyond, well, of course, I guess a lot of it is folded into your paranormal life, but now I understand that you published your first book a year ago?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So what...
Yeah, that was a really cool opportunity that presented itself to me. I was my sophomore year of college, and I got a message online one day saying, "Hey, Nick, you live in Athens, right? That's where Ohio University is." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, my publisher is looking for someone to write a book about Athens, someone that has a level of expertise there." And they said, "Hey, we know of you. What do you think? What do you what do you think? And I said, oh my gosh, you kidding me? I'd love to write a book about Athens. It's being an author is something I've always wanted to do, and I've always said I want to write multiple books one day, not just one. So obviously you got to start somewhere. So I figured I'd use this opportunity to write my first book. And to make a long story short, there were some legal issues with the university not allowing certain photographs to be used in the book, and the publishing company needed those exact photographs. So there was a sort of unfortunately, they weren't able to publish my book, but at that point I said, you know what, I'm doing all this hard work, I'm just going to self-publish it. So I went ahead and continued doing it, and then I had the book physically in stores October of my junior year of college, so just after I turned 21. And that was a really, really cool feeling, seeing your own book in the display window on the corner of where you walk to class every day.
Hey, I was tickled to have my picture in the Scarefest guidebook. So yeah, I definitely understand that. Now the book about I didn't read up on it a lot. Was it about the haunted history of Athens, or just the history of Athens, or what was?
Yeah. It's called Ghosts and Legends of Athens, Ohio, which I think the name says it all.
Yeah, I'd say that covers it pretty well. Did you do this based on interviews, articles? Tell us a little bit about the process of writing the book.
So what I started out doing was I went to the archives of the library, and they have a section of just a collection of documents and old articles posted in newspapers about just the weird stuff that goes on here. Whether you can call it bizarre folklore, or supernatural stories, whatever, but anything that's ever popped up in the newspapers or any sorts of articles, whatever, it's all compiled there. So I went up to these archives, and for multiple occasions, I would just spend hours digging through these files and taking notes and finding all these old stories and stuff. And then when I did that, I'd go online, I'd find books related to the subjects, and I just kind of dig deeper into these stories. And then I started tracking down people, and then I started conducting several interviews with people and who have experienced things in here, or in Athens. And then I would meet up with a bunch of students. I kind of printed out a flyer that was basically like a Ghost Stories Wanted flyer. If you've experienced any experiences in Athens, get in contact with me, whatever. I posted it up all over campus, and I got lots of interviews from that, and great stories, a lot of awesome contributions. So that's kind of how I went about doing some of the initial research for my book. But I got to the point where it was really a grassroots effort of just knocking on businesses of stores and just asking questions, posting flyers in the windows, and it was very just heel to the grindstone, going out and just trying to find stories. So I'm pretty proud of having to go through all that and finally have a compilation of stories that I could publish.
And also, Nick actually held an investigation there in Athens at the Ridges, which is, for me, frightening, but that was an amazing investigation. So Nick would actually participate in the actual investigations that he wrote about.
You need Clerisy Press. That's exactly what they look for. You need to talk to them. They do all the state, ghost hunting, Kentucky, and that type of thing.
Okay.
I've read a bunch of their books. They do some really good work, but little city things like that, they like little, because it's a very good market for them. Now, in your college years, you've now understand you're studying journalism, And but your emphasis is on production, as in video and movie production or some such stuff.
Yeah. I know it sounds weird, but for what I want to do, you don't necessarily need a college degree. It's nice to have one, but it's more about experience. It's more about what you've done. So for me, I'm a journalism student just because I want at the end of the day, I want that piece of paper that says, journalism degree. Ohio University is one of the most prestigious journalism schools in the country. So for me, it's just I just wanted that, OU journalism diploma. I'm in it just for that piece of paper. The actual stuff that I'm physically doing is definitely production related. When I had an internship last February in London, England, for a television company. It was actually the same company that makes Paranormal Witness on the Sci-Fi Channel. And while I was there, I actually, I was doing a bunch of different jobs, but when I found out that they did Paranormal Witness, I was talking to them like, hey, by the way, I do all of this crazy stuff, and I'm definitely going to be underutilized if I'm not helping you guys. So I ended up doing a lot more than interns are supposed to do, and I ended up getting a bunch of stories for them, compiling a whole bunch of stories, and they actually used some of the stories that are coming out in the upcoming season, which is really cool. And then from there, I had an internship in Nashville last summer where I was working on music videos all summer. So I've done a bunch of stuff in film and television, and that's definitely where my career is heading towards. It's going to be. I'm graduating this December, so I'm in that period of, all right, well, everything's about to become real life, so I better get this taken care of, get this sorted out.
What area? Where is your passion in that field? I mean, do you foresee yourself? Do you want to be the next guy that creates the next Paranormal Witness or something similar? Or is the paranormal that ingrained to you? Or you said about music videos. What is there any particular aspect of the production that you would really, if the opportunity, you would just absolutely, that would be your dream job?
Well, my career is definitely, going into television. So obviously it's not going to be only paranormal stuff I work on. Otherwise I'll have a very, very short career. But if, obviously my first interest I ever had was in the paranormal. So if by chance I were to work on a TV show that was also about the paranormal or be on one of those shows, hey, that's just an extra thumbs up. That's cool because that's something I'm extra passionate about. So I would not mind working on a show like that or even producing a show like that. Again, my career is in television, so I'll be working on a variety of different types of shows and things like that. But if I ever have the opportunity to work on a show or create a show that is, you could call it in that paranormal genre, I mean, heck, that'd be awesome. That'd be really, I would be all into that for sure.
Well, when you get high enough up the food chain, let me know, and I will pitch you an idea or two. How many times have you heard that? God, I still have people walk up to me and say, how do you get into TV? I said, look at me. I'm on the radio. How would I know? Okay, we're coming up on the end of the show. Let's get our plugs in. First of all, I'll do the websites for you. Everybody, you can you can play the home version by going to DebLantz.com. That is DebLantz.com. Nick decided to get his a little shorter. It is in Lantz, in the letter as in Nick. So it's inlantz.com. And I understand you've got an appearance or two, Deb.
Yeah, my next appearance will be at SuperCon in Erie, Pennsylvania, the end of this month. I believe it's October 28th through October 28th through November 1st, I believe. So that's always a wonderful event, and I'm really looking forward to that. Nick is also invited to go. I think he might even be on the website, but Nick will not be able to attend this year.
So Mama Lantz is going to be flying solo.
I'm flying solo. Yep.
Well, I want to thank the two of you for coming on and sharing your stories with us. And, of course, Deb, you know I'm going to be talking to you more in the near future anyway.
Yes, sir.
But it has been great, and I want to thank you both for coming on Paranormal Filler.
Thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate it.
And everybody, this is Paranormal Filler. Don't know what the schedule's going to be like this month. I got some events booked, and I'm trying to bounce around and figure out what's going on in between everything. There's a lot going on in my life. But looking forward to the next show.